Okay, I think we're in. Welcome, everyone. I see some attendees trickling in. Maybe we can wait for maybe about 30 more seconds to 1 minute to start our live webinar and live chat. Welcome. See some familiar faces from Hong Kong or familiar names from Hong Kong. And I believe some people outside of Hong Kong might be dialing in as well.
There's a gentleman that is actually calling in from the UK that I haven't seen for about 30 years.
Great.
Okay. You know who you are.
Okay, so let's start. I believe people can hear us. Our microphone is on. So welcome everyone again. Good afternoon if you're in Hong Kong. Greetings for people who are attending outside of Hong Kong. We're very excited to be launching this initiative today with you. Transcend into Leadership, which is a monthly virtual chat that we're doing with our CEO, Tony Dickel. And the purpose of this is really to share a lot of our insights and a lot of our research and work around leadership and organizational development. For a lot of you that know us, we worked with both individuals, but also groups and corporates, whether it's our public coach training or our organizational programs that we do in corporates. And this event is really to share insights from that. Now, there's some people who are familiar with Transcend and others that are not, but just to have everyone on the same page, just a little bit about Transcend International. We are a global organization and our mission is to help individuals and organizations adapt and optimize in the face of increasing pressure, stress, and overwhelm. And I'll stop with that. And this is something we wrote a few years ago, and very true to the world that we're facing and we're experiencing today, because we believe that change is the only constant, and the best thing that we can do as individuals and organizations and leaders as well is to adapt and optimize. And more on that in this virtual chat. So I'm saying that it's a virtual chat, but it's in a webinar format. However, we do encourage interaction. So just as a housekeeping here, in your panel or dashboard, you will see a Q&A box where you can chat in your questions. You also see a chat box, which is just for comments, but also you can raise your hand if you want to speak. And we do encourage people to speak as well and just ask questions, and we can go back and forth with a discussion. So as we start, I just want to introduce Tony here, who will be kind of leading the conversation today. So Tony, who's the CEO of Transcend International, as some of you know, Tony is also a leading executive coach. He's a leadership trainer, a corporate mindfulness trainer, and a trained psychotherapist as well. So Tony brings in more than 20 years of experience in leadership positions in sectors like investment banking, consulting, and consumer services and products. What you see in this third bullet point is an alphabet soup of coaching organizations that Tony has served as president of. So the Hong Kong International Coaching Community, the ICF, which is the International Coaching Federation, and in Europe, which is the EMCC, the European Mentoring and Coaching Council. Apart from Tony's work at Transcend, he's also the country director for Potential Project in Hong Kong and Greater China, which is a leading global provider of corporate-based mindfulness trainings. And I know our work in Transcend as well is very grounded in science-based, evidence-based mindfulness. And I'm sure Tony will touch upon this as well. So,
and if I might interrupt, actually, yeah. just for the sake of full disclosure, in fact, it's Transcend that is a founding member of the European Mentoring and Coaching Council, not Tony Dickel in his own name as such. So it's a slight error there.
Yes. Yes. So we'll start with a couple of questions just to kick off the chat. And as I mentioned, you have 3 options to interact with us. Raise your hand if you want to ask a question, and we'll enable your microphone, or you can just chat it in, or do a formal Q&A in the question and answer box. Sounds good?
Great, brilliant.
Okay. So maybe the first question, we are calling this Transcend into Leadership in a virtual chat. And just for the audiences to know, how do we define leadership here at Transcend? What's our perspective about that?
Yeah, okay. So you know what, I'd actually like, if it's possible, to get some chats going on this one.
Okay.
I mean, we do have something to share in the context of a perspective on leadership. But who would like to give us an offer on what leadership is? What is it that people think leadership is? And I'm going to maybe say, especially given situations that we're in right now. What is your perspective right now on leadership?
And you can type it in the chat box. We have enabled it for everyone. Make sure you type it for all panelists and attendees so that everyone can see your answers.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what have you got? Okay, something's coming in. Yeah, influencing others, lovely. David's written, a leader is only a leader if he or she has followers. Yes, I mean, you could argue that you're always a leader because at least you have to lead yourself. I guess you could argue that, but yes, this is certainly a perspective. Any other offers? There's influencing coming in. A number of remarks about that.
We have someone that raised their hand, Anne Welsh, who we know. So I'll enable your mic, Anne. Maybe you can offer your definition and unmute.
Are you on? Is she unmuted? Sorry, whatever you said, Anne, we couldn't hear you. Could you say that once more if you said something? Okay. Okay, so we've got positively impacting the organization, the people, and the greater society. Well, okay, well, just in service of time, because we don't have a great deal of time today, let's give you a take on leadership. And this is a little bit different, and it really is perhaps a forgotten aspect of leadership, and it kind of goes like this. Leadership is, so leadership, you could say, is the ability. And of course, this doesn't mean that you don't have followers. It doesn't mean that any of the other things are not true. But especially in things like, in situations like this, a leader needs to be at one's best in as many moments as possible. So leadership is about being at your best moment by moment. And as part of that, as part of being at your best, you are behaving in a way that brings others to be at their best. So what we mean by others is team members, staff, customers, and peers. Behaving in a way moment by moment so that others can be at their best moment by moment. And despite all of the stuff that is going on, crises, obstacles, difficulties, and things like this. So we say despite obstacles and difficulties, but maybe more importantly, you can look at it as being especially, a great leader will step up to the plate, especially in the face of obstacles and difficulties, and nonetheless be at their best. And bring others to their best moment by moment, even though they're stressed, even though they may have all sorts of emotions running, they still have to show up moment by moment at their best, if that makes sense. So I don't know if anybody's got any comments on that. Please do chuck them into the chats.
Now, okay, so maybe just as a follow up on that. We're all here. We have a good number of attendees here, and all of them are here for a reason. And I do believe it's because of these obstacles and difficulties that we're facing right now, especially from a leadership and organizational perspective, this profound changes that you're talking about. Can you tell us more about what are we in the middle of as leaders and managers?
So as Sam, I think, mentioned earlier on, change is probably the only organizational constant. And that train left the station long ago, and it's not going back. So what we do know is that we're in the middle of all of these things. It's profound, and the word unexpected, because the human mind does not like uncertainty. And certainty is probably impossible. So the fact that uncertainty is there is a reality that we need to face, and we need to learn how to be adaptive to that reality. But we've got change going on, which is simultaneous, unexpected, and profound in all of those things. There are economic and business factors. The shape of the world is changing from a demographic perspective, of course, and that's coming at us. There are social and cultural factors coming at us, including things like, what was profoundly acceptable maybe 30 years ago will now probably get you in prison in some cases. So changing social, cultural factors, political factors, natural factors. We've got coronavirus right now. If it's not coronavirus, it's climate change. If it's not climate change, it's something else. And then, of course, we have weapons of mass distraction, as we like to call them here, which is maybe all of these things, which are kind of setting up a sense of being completely overwhelmed, totally overloaded, and we sometimes call it the paid reality. Pressure, always on, information overloaded and distracted world in which we live. And there's a comment that's come in from Anne, and she said that the current situation in the UK is challenging leaders to be more certain rather than inclusive in their approach. The system forces at the moment are at odds with leadership as we have been facilitating it. And that's probably very, very true. Because when we feel uncertain, the first thing that the mind does often when it feels uncertain is to try to know. And sometimes we say, know the unknowable. And the attempt to know the unknowable takes many people right off of track around what is it that we can do in this moment that is actually optimal so that we can be at our best, we can be connected to and aligned with our values, and we can help others be at their best because they're going through the same stuff as we are right now.
Yeah, thank you for that. And again, for the people that are here and I'm sure a lot of us here are leaders, managers, and just in various leadership roles in our lives. Please chat in your questions or drop them into the Q&A box. You can also raise your hand if you want to speak through audio as well. But maybe what I can do is just ask a follow-up question from this. As a leader that is experiencing this and has a team or organization that is experiencing this, what can we do? I know it's a big question.
Right. All right. So this is where the rubber. Oh, thank you for that, because this is obviously what people are here to maybe try to learn. And so the first thing is that we need to learn how to manage our attention. So. And that may sound very, very obvious, because if we're learning to manage our attention, we need to know what it is that we need to attend to, right? So the first step is to work out what is it, and we talk about a values-based perspective. What is it that you think is the most important thing for you, or what are things that you really care about? Because the challenge is that when stress happens, we take our mind off of the things that we want and the things that we really care about. And our mind tends to go into what we call automatic negative predictions, often of all kinds of worst case outcomes. And we start predicting and ruminating and making assertions and assumptions that may not be real. And then we create emotional states that are related to those predictions. That then take us away from being attentive to what we care about. And I like to call this internal fake news. So fake news there's a lot of it, of course, out there, but I can promise you that there's more fake news that goes on in here than there is even that goes on out there. And I don't have a slide on it, but the acronym that we've kind of come up with for this is FALSE, F standing for false, A stands for appearances, where the appearances are appearances to the mind, which is all of this prediction that we're doing about what may or may not happen, trying to know the unknowable, and normally erring on the negative side of it. False appearances, keeping us entangled. False appearances keeping us entangled. And we've got to learn to recognize our own internal fake news. Basically say, oh, okay, here is that again. Thank you for what it is that you're trying to tell me. I'm listening to you, but I need to bring my resources online at the same time. where my resources include the things that bring me to my best, or the things that I can attend to that give me more of a sense of well-being, or that I'm making some form of progress towards something that I care about. And those things that we need to be attentive to in the moment, moment by moment, include obviously the tasks, skills, values, strengths, other resources, relationships, and other, if you wish, mental states and other resources that help us to be at our best in the very moment that we're beginning to derail, and maybe we're getting anxious or combative. And in that very moment, we need to notice what faint news is running and then say, oh, here it comes, thank you, feel it, put some space around it, and then basically say, okay, so this is happening, I don't like it, but how can I bring myself to my best right now? I think that's it, and that's basically it. That's the answer to life, the universe, and everything. You're going to ask me how we do it, aren't you?
I am, but I was wishing that some other people would ask this as well. So maybe what I'll do is, can we get out of this screen share and just have our talking heads and just take this?
There's that other, sorry, there's just a little bit which I forgot to just add, that all of these factors add up to what you've probably heard of as being the VUCA reality in which we live.
Yeah. Today. And one comment here is for people who are chatting in, like Anne right now, do change your to field to all panelists and attendees, because there's some people who are chatting in with really great comments, but only Tony and I can read them.
Yeah.
But if you change it to include attendees, everyone can read them as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Anne, if you want to chat, whatever you commented as well, again, to attendees, that would be great.
Yeah, and that applies to anybody who has sent comments in just to us. One thing that's come up, and I think this is Anne's comment, is really the ability, which is of course part of this, to move. And we call this, in fact, we did a webinar just a little bit earlier today, and on resilience. And one of the things that we said on that webinar was that we need to spend more time looking out the window. And what we really meant by that, because it sounds mundane, is that we need to notice when fake news is running us, when we've got fake news that has gripped us by the throat and beginning to drive our state of consciousness and therefore our behavior. We need to notice that running, and we need to interrupt it by just maybe taking a couple of breaths and just looking out the window, or doing something else which is more of a present moment activity, so that we can then reflect on such things as, what brings me to my best here? What situations have I dealt with which have been similar to this in the past? I'm noticing that I've had difficulties in the past, but I'm also noticing that I'm still breathing despite that. I'm still here. I've still got people that love me. I've got a job maybe, or maybe I can get one if I haven't. I've got resources that are available to me. And those resources have, just for the moment, gone missing in action. And what is it that I can do right now to bring them back online? And that is, to some extent, about reflection. But this is, for many of us, much more difficult than just me saying it. Me just saying it, or even you knowing it, doesn't actually make it happen. But there are things that we can do, including, and I'm not going to go into this in detail perhaps right now, but if you would have heard of mindfulness training as a way to train the neural infrastructure of skillful attention, and know that skillful attention leads to skillful behavior. But the neural infrastructure of skillful attention is probably best trained through the practice of mindfulness. Okay, so that's just something that you can do if you're not doing it already. And I know some of you on this call, and I know a few of you already are doing it. But if you're not, please do consider this, because more than anything else, this will help you skillfully navigate this. And it's not only about coronavirus. If it's not coronavirus, it's going to be something else. It might be redundancy. It might be financial crises. It might be illness. It might be simply that there are people on your team that are not performing in the way that you would love them to perform, and you might find yourself getting agitated or combative, and you might find yourself maybe moving towards blame. This is not being at your best, and it certainly is not bringing others to be at their best, because we need to be in a state of what is known as reward in order to be at our best, which is the opposite of threat.
Makes sense. Yeah. Let me just, there's a Q&A here. I'll stop the share. Yeah. And let's go into the Q&A. This is from Erica Stein. Given that stress and anxiety can be contagious, do you have recommendations on prompts to use with others when you recognize fake news like you described and its resulting impacts and maybe trickling throughout the team?
Yeah, that's a lovely question. In order to get the answer to that question, you need to train as a coach. No, but seriously though, obviously the first thing is to, when you recognize fake news, either within yourself or with others, the question is then how do you bring it up? Because for many of us, actually, the big secret is that we all have resources, right? We all have things that we really care about. We all have strengths, that have been available to us in different contexts of our lives that we have used to navigate obstacles. The strengths that we have used perhaps to get here right now, to get through that university degree perhaps, to get through the various rungs of leadership. We have used strengths, we've used resources, we've overcome obstacles. And sometimes what we need to do really is just really to remember those in the moment when we are most stressed. And it's things like this. And so we need to just firstly notice that there is something going on. And that will often show up in the body. There'll be a sensation in the body which is uncomfortable. And the body is the signal that and we're all capable of learning how to recognize those signals. Having recognized the signal, and we need to feel the signal. So we often say you've got two choices with emotions. You can either feel them, and if you don't allow yourselves to feel them, then you will become them, and you'll be caught up in the flow of that emotion, and then the thought stream that comes with that emotion. So you need to just spend a couple of seconds feeling the emotion, and what that does, and this is the answer really to Erica's question. What that does is it brings you into the present moment. And when you're in the present moment, just noticing what you're feeling and noticing what you're thinking, rather than just thinking and being, rather than just taking thoughts as facts and taking emotions as you in that moment. I am angry, I am scared. It's not true. You're having certain sensations that are in your psychosomatic system that you can watch. And then when you're in the present moment, you can simply ask the question, how can I bring this person to be at their best right now? And it wouldn't be, and doing that won't include things like asking the question, or saying, I don't understand why you're thinking like that. You should be thinking like this. That doesn't work. But what you could be doing instead is just saying, so John, or maybe Sam, so what's happening with you right now? And just asking that question. And as soon as you ask that question, Sam's in the present moment. And then he's able to reflect on what's happening with him. And hopefully then bring himself back to that which is skillful for him. Rather than, Sam, I can see that you're angry. What are you angry about? Why are you thinking like that? Which is more the traditional response when we as leaders are under stress. That's how we might behave. I don't know if that begins to answer the question, Erica.
Let's see. I think
there's a few messages.
It does. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. And such a great question.
It's a nice question.
Especially
and it's everything, actually.
Yeah. Leadership. And leadership is not kind of an insular. It's not just about the individual. You are functioning in a context with people and organizations as well.
And be careful with your micro impulses because, as a leader, I get challenged with it myself. I sometimes feel that I can be relatively skillful with some of the big stuff, but I get derailed sometimes by the small little micro impulses that just come up, and they cause you maybe to roll your eyes or to just interrupt somebody or show a facial expression of judgment, sometimes around quite small stuff. We need to notice all of that unfolding and catch ourselves. Mindfulness is about two things. It's about noticing what you're about to do before you do it, right? Which implies noticing what's happening in your mind, noticing what's happening in your emotional field before you have reacted to it, and then redirecting your attention to, and the language you use is what is skillful or optimal relative to your success and your well-being. And we can train it. I mean, it's very neurological in terms of the training. And when you do begin to practice this, you will find that this is beginning to happen automatically without your knowing it. You're just, in a moment, being able to see things with varying different perspectives and be at your best. Wonderful.
I like how we're tying in things together. Mindfulness keeps on coming up and
it's
being
funny
present.
It's funny that, isn't it?
So we have a question from anonymous attendee. What can a leader do differently to support her teams to reduce stress, negative feelings in general in the office?
So that's also a really good question too, because it is a collective responsibility, of course, but primarily it's a leader's responsibility. Sometimes we say that a company is like a sort of like an emotional alphabet soup. And there's all the emotions, all the letters of the alphabet are being thrown into this soup by all of the various different members of the team. But the reality is that the leader's flavor is stronger than everybody else's, and it can overpower and overwhelm others' flavor. So it needs to somehow be leader-led. And it includes things like the simple things, if you're going to have a habit, for example, of sending out WhatsApp messages at 10 o'clock at night, 2 o'clock in the morning, while you're sitting on the toilet, all sorts of times, weekends, public holidays. I do that. Sam knows it. I do send out WhatsApp messages, but we've got an agreement between us that if I do not put the word urgent next to it, then that means it's not urgent. And we have a little symbol. He will write back and he'll say, noted for later, and he'll just write NFL, noted for later. And then I know that it's been acknowledged. Or sometimes I won't even expect that. So be careful how you're driving others' unskillful cognitions in terms of how you're showing up as a leader. And the other thing is that it's an interesting thing that there was a study that was published in Forbes, I think about 3 years ago, about leadership derailers. And I totally buy into this. They said that the number one leadership derailer was it's not about the incompetence, the technical incompetence of the leader. It's nothing about that at all. The number one leadership derailer is, and the expression they used was lack of warmth. So just being connected, just giving the impression that you care about your people. And what's the best way to give the impression that you care about your people? Care about your people. You can fake it till you make it, but not for long before people will catch you out. So be genuinely curious about your people, about people around you. Be connected. We call this having professional intimacy with your people. Because all things being equal, if you know people, they will trust you more. As long as you are not evidently self-interested. But even if you are not self-interested, people won't know that unless you get to know them. Right? So it is important to build connection with your people. And that is difficult today because of all of the Zoom fatigue that is going on right now. But you have to try. You connect with them as kindly as possible, as often as possible, and as regularly as possible.
And this came up in our webinar this morning as well, connecting with compassion.
Yes.
Okay, so guys, we have 1 minute left and we're going strong. I mean, we have maybe just one person dropped off and we are at 100% attendance rate from the registration. So why not we just do one more question in this last minute, and whoever has an engagement at 4:30 can drop off, but we'll just take one more question or one more comment. I see here a comment from David Rigby. Maybe we can read that out loud.
I can't see it.
Here, I can read it.
Well, that's an essay.
It is an essay. This is Tony's friend, I'm assuming.
I think it is, yeah. So I teach and practice mindfulness, and more recently I'm able to meditate in groups. I find that I'm not at all stressed. I've attended many international Zoom sessions. I've been surprised at how many of the attendees are really stressed and overworked. My message has been that you have to look after yourself first so that you can help others.
Absolutely right.
And that is profound. And thank you for sharing that, David, because that's what we call this, the Cathay Pacific, the analogy, When the mask falls down, you've got to put it on yourself before you should help even your children. If you can't look after yourself, you're not going to be in any position to help others. And helping others is really helping your teams is the essence of great leadership, being there for them, supporting them, and really being mindful of their needs, as well as the organization and the systemic needs that you have. You're not going to be able to do that if you've got a lot of your own stuff going on. So very, very good. Thank you for that.
Thank you, David.
Is there any way that people can engage with us afterwards if they would like to with any other questions?
Yes, absolutely. We will send a follow-up email, and I think you have already received an email from us or multiple in terms of reminding you about this webinar. It's comms@transcendinternational.com. But please reach out anytime. And the idea of this is to have it on a monthly basis. So we have every fourth Wednesday of each month. And what we'll do for the future registrations is maybe as people register, we'll also ask them to, as an option, put in a few questions as well that we can answer live. But yeah.
But perhaps just one thing, just see if you can remember that sort of thing at the beginning, because it's very, very key, and it's not often talked about. That leading is about being at your best. Being at your best means being moment by moment attentive to that which you really care about, being moment by moment attentive to that which you want, rather than the stuff that you don't want, which is problems. In other words, moving towards focusing on goals or values rather than on problems. The problems are where all of the fake news is often there. Problems are often created by the mind. You can't do much about what's happening in the external world. You can't stop the waves from coming, but you can learn how to surf them. And I'll probably leave you with that. So thank you very, very much indeed.
Thank you very much
for coming today.
Thank you for your time. And I just chatted in our contact emails here. So please stay in touch, and we'll see you again next month. Thank you.
Thank you.